right, welcome back to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. My name is Brian Fisher. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. The network is AFR Talk, American Family Radio Talk Network, the most dangerous and feared radio network in all the land. And we're about to prove that by having as an in-studio guest Bradlee Dean, who is with Sons of Liberty Radio. And Bradlee, you've been a guest on this program before. Welcome back. I don't know about the, you get hit by Right Wing Watch about as often as I do. So, for the Right Wing Watch folks that are cyber stalking us and tracking us, we're giving you a twofer here. Yeah. This is a 2-for-1. You get Bradlee Dean and you get me in one clip. So this is bonus day.
I was just going to say that all
our
free.
Our friends on Right Wing Watch. So I don't know, Bradlee, what happens, with those lithium-ion batteries, when you get them too close together, you get this like thermal runaway. It's out of control. You can't stop it. Everything burns up. So I don't know what's going to happen with the proximity here.
It works.
Yeah. But anyway, Bradlee, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about Sons of Liberty Radio, and tell us a little bit about your ministry. I usually bring you on the program because you've gotten thrown out of another high school or thrown out of another city because you've had the courage to tell the truth. So tell us about Sons of Liberty Radio, what your ministry is, and how people can get more information about you.
Well, we've done about 350 high schools in 24 different states, and the purpose we're doing that and why we're doing that is because we're dealing with a generation that's being subjected to everything and protected from nothing. And once I begin to study out the foundations, as George Washington rightly said, religion and morality are the essential pillars of civil society. And then I begin to look at the farewell address and what George Washington told students in this country all the way up until 1962. I knew something was seriously wrong. So what we wanted to do is go out and reach out into that community, namely the greatest demographic that we have in this country, the public high schools. I realized the law's behind us, and so is God. And so therefore, if I knew that God was behind us and the laws of our constitutional republic were behind us, then I got to get up and do something about what's going on. I want to be a part of the answer, Brian, not a part of the problem.
Well, it's striking to me, Bradlee, you go into these public schools and you declare values that all of the founding fathers believed. Everything you say is consistent with the view of the founding fathers, whether it has to do with human sexuality or marriage or the sanctity of life. That's what the founding fathers believed.
Right.
And for you to declare, and your team to declare these truths in public school, it's supposed to be a place of education.
That's right.
Where they ought to be learning this stuff. And
That's
then
right.
for you to run into some kind of counter energies, it's kind of revealing.
Yeah, it is. It's also interesting that our opposition, because I know the state-run media likes to make it a lot bigger than what it really is. When we deal with opposition in a public school, it's usually one or two teachers. Going back to how you just introduced the last question, it's interesting to me that John Adams, the second president of the United States, said that our Constitution was made for a moral and a religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That's all we have to do is understand our forefathers and what they established and who they obeyed in the process of establishing what we have 238 years later. Once we begin to understand the two rocks, the Bible and the Constitution and our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, so on and so forth, it's really not that hard to figure out what needs to be done here. And again, what I like to do is just go back and be a part of the answer to our younger generation, because for the most part, Brian, as I said earlier, nobody's really standing up and fighting for them inside of their ring. And people need to understand that those kids that we're talking about, those are our kids. Those kids don't belong to the state or to the government. They belong to the parents. And so therefore, we're just going back to our own.
And we've last few days, we've been talking about that concept that the world has. I played some sound bites from Melissa Harris Perry, from MSNBC, from a Harvard educator, basically saying, look, it's an antiquated notion that kids belong to their parents.
Yep.
They belong to us. They belong to the state. And that's why they'll shove parents aside, shove their values aside when it comes to values education in our school system. And I think, Bradlee, you've found that, I want to get your reaction to the way in which teens, the students themselves, respond to your message. You've got teachers or administrators coming after you, trying to shut you down, cut you off, get you shipped off campus. But how do the students themselves, because you're in public school campuses, you're going right in to to the belly of the beast. You declare the truth, and what kind of response do you get from students?
The response is not only just from the students, but it's also from the teacher faculty as well. We did a high school in Kabul, Missouri some years back. I was actually showing a picture of Samuel Armas, who had spinal bifida, and I was promoting life, not advocating abortion or death. And the principal came out.
Now, this was the picture of the little
famous
child
picture
reaching out of the womb while he was having surgery while in the womb.
That's right.
And wraps his hand around the finger of the surgeon.
That's exactly right. And I showed that to 700 students. The principal didn't like that. He comes out and he says, if this bothers anybody, you can go ahead and leave. Well, one student and one teacher got up and walked out. 698 students stayed. It was as if the Lord put his hand on the students and said, just hang on a second. So he walked out. A couple minutes later. He comes back because he's seen that the students didn't follow his lead. It completely backfired, Brian, and it always will, friends. But what was interesting is it completely backfired. He said that there's an emergency at the high school, assembly over. Lo and behold, just to show you how much further the students went, they stood up along with the teacher faculty, gave me a standing ovation for standing up for the values that they themselves believe in. He gave audience to 2 people. He at the end said 3 people. What about the 698 students that agreed with the message that was being given unto them? And what was interesting in that particular situation, the students walked down, Brian, and I say this to every parent and every adult out there today, the students were asking me, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, you have to stand up and you have to do the right thing, and you need not move from what you believe in. Go back to the founding documents. And we have to, as the older generation, have to go back because wisdom is justified by your children, Jesus said. We have to go back and sow into our posterity because if we don't, we need to keep in mind that they are going to be our rulers sooner or later. And this is what we're beginning to see across the country.
Well, and Ronald Reagan was the one that famously said that freedom is only one generation away from extinction. It's similar to the statement we use in the church that God has no grandchildren. Everybody's got to make a decision for themselves. And so capturing the next generation is absolutely critical. We can't just count on the momentum that's been generated by people that came before us. That torch of liberty has got to be transferred. It's got to be transmitted, picked up by the next generation.
If I can interject something real quick too. When you do stand up, opposition doesn't know how to respond to you. The only thing they know how to do is shout and shoot. And the media likes to get involved as well, and they like to distort the message. They like to distort the truth. Well, the fact of the matter is if that would have hit the press, which it did in 3 states, by the way, I was anti-abortion, I was, a bigot for standing up against homosexuality, so on and so forth. Well, the fact of the matter is most people across this country don't support those issues. When you stand up, you will find that you have easily the majority standing with you, and the only people that you have standing against you is the state-run media and a couple that didn't like your message. We win the day, but the church needs to stay the course. And God is always willing to give to the church, Brian, what they're willing to fight for. God has never failed a faithful man. He never has.
And I just want to give a word to those that are in our listening audience that live in this geographical area. Our headquarters here in Tupelo. So if you live in Northeast Mississippi, Bradlee and his team will be here in town tonight at the Kings Gate Worship Center. It's on West Jackson Street in Tupelo, 6 p.m. That's Kings Gate Worship Center on West Jackson on your way out to the airport. And Bradlee, tell me 2 things. I want to shift gears and talk about your suit with Rachel Maddow to close our time together.
Yep.
But tell us, it's Kings Gate Worship Center tonight, 6 p.m. right here in Tupelo. And what are you going to be doing, and who ought to come to this thing? Who should come?
Everybody ought to come. The number one, and by the way, don't take my word for it. Just go to sonsoflibertyradio.com or go to youcanruninternational.com. Look at what the people are saying. Don't take it from me. Take it from them. I'd rather have them give you the reference or referral than it coming out from me. But bring the older generation and the younger generation, because I'm doing my best through what God has given unto me to bridge the gap between the older generation and the younger generation. And what we do is we talk a plethora of topics. We talk about where we came from, therefore we know where we're going. And then I like to highlight the very end of it through the conviction of sin, righteousness, and judgment with the law in the hand of Christ, line upon line, precept upon precept. At the very end, we want to show people the price paid for our freedoms, both in the natural and in the spiritual, because what is withheld from this generation is the price paid for their freedoms. If we would simply show the American people the price paid for their freedoms, I'll tell you what, we'll empty the correctional facilities in this country out in a day.
One last thing. We got about 2 minutes left. Bradlee, you're involved in a court action with Rachel Maddow of MSNBC,
Correct.
who's a noted enemy of righteousness and truth. So just very quickly, we've got about 90 seconds. How did that lawsuit come about, and where do things stand today?
August 2010, we were broadcasting live out of Washington, D.C. I said the Muslims were calling for the execution of the homosexuals. Rachel Maddow thought it'd be cute to omit 1 minute out of the middle of my message and my warning to the homosexual communities, and she tried to portray me as the one calling for the execution of the homosexuals. May 2011, the first report, she pulls up a disclaimer and says, well, Bradlee's not really calling for the execution of the homosexuals. She knows all the well I wasn't calling for the execution.
And this is of a piece with what MSNBC has done and NBC all along, the editing they're doing of these tapes, like they did that in the Trayvon Martin case with George Zimmerman,
exactly
to make him out to be a racist. So doing the same thing to you.
Yep.
Editing the tape to make it look like you were calling for the execution of homosexuals.
She did it in August of 2010. May of 2011, she resurrects the same piece, goes after Michelle Bachmann and myself and says, Michelle Bachmann, Bradlee Dean is calling for the upping of the bloodshed in America's culture wars because Christians and conservatives are not doing enough to kill the gays. Once she did that, she pulled down the disclaimer. I started getting death threats. They took my home, put it up online. They put my physical address along with my home, started getting death threats from across America. I went and hired an attorney out of Washington, D.C., and we're going after MSNBC now for $50 million, and we're in appeals right now is where we're at.
And if people would like to find out more about that or find a way that they could help and contribute to the Legal Defense Fund, where could they go for that?
SonsOfLibertyRadio.com, SonsOfLibertyRadio.com.
Okay. SonsOfLibertyRadio.com. Our guest has been Bradlee Dean with Sons of Liberty Radio, and Bradlee, can folks pick that up online?
All over the country, SonsOfLibertyRadio.com.
Okay, great. Yep. In fact, I think Bradlee's going to be doing his show from one of our studios here at AFR just as soon as we're done here. Well, Bradlee, thanks for taking time to be with us. Again, Bradlee Dean, Sons of Liberty, tonight at Kings Gate Worship Center in Tupelo, if you live in this area, out on West Jackson Street. All right, Bradlee, thanks for dropping by. God bless you, my friend.
Yeah,
and
you too.
I appreciate you being in the battle on the front lines. So. All right, so that's Bradlee Dean, Sons of Liberty Radio, and he'll be here in town, Tupelo, tonight. More when we come back. Number to call if you want to join the conversation, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Glad to talk about anything we've talked about in the program. So far, what you heard from Bradlee Dean, the comments I made earlier about creation science. Back in 2, stay with us.